Today I'm here with the fantastic Lee Anderson MP, the MP for Ashfield. Thank you for having us.
You're welcome.
I need to ask you a question. How does it feel being the darling of the Conservative Party?
Darling or the bad boy? I don't know which one it is.
Oh no, I think it's definitely the darling of the Conservative Party. The membership love you.
Well, yeah, the membership, I get lots of emails each week from members from all over the country saying, keep up the good work, you're saying what we're thinking. And if that's happening, if my inbox is telling me that and the membership's telling me that, I'll continue doing what I'm doing. But basically, all I'm doing is, I think I'm saying what most people think. And
you are.
Sometimes it might, people say, you're brave. I'm not brave, I'm just being true to myself. So I'll continue doing it.
Absolutely. And you're a social media star as well now?
Well,
that's quite new, isn't it?
I'm on Twitter. I've been on Twitter just over a month now. I've got 50,000 followers, so I'm sure
you've got 50,000 followers in a month.
Yeah, I'm sure that a lot of them don't love me. There's a lot of haters on there, but you know what? I've got broad shoulders, so if I don't want to upset people, but if I'm winding up the right type of people, the lefties, the Owen Joneses, the Guardian, or the Daily Mirror, all these sorts of people, then I'm doing something right.
No, absolutely. Well, I'm up here looking at fuel poverty, looking actually at how net zero policy has affected fuel poverty up here, the energy crisis, and just talking to people from all walks of life, really. MPs, I've been talking to I talked to the head of Quadrilla, Francis Egan. I've gone into food banks, I've gone to community kitchens, just talking to people about what's actually going on. But your background is actually in energy because you were a coal miner and all your family were coal miners, is that right?
That's right, yeah. I was, when I left school, I went down the pits and worked with my dad underground at Sutton Colliery. My granddad and great-granddads go back 200 years in this area. All my family, all the male members of my family at some time have spent a lot of time underground working, getting the coal out. So it sort of followed that when I left school, I did the same. And so probably I'm a little bit biased when it comes to my ideas on energy. But I still think that fossil fuels have got a big part to play in energy, not just in the UK, but around the world. And we seem to have just binned or not had a decent energy policy for the past 30 or 40 years. And when I was down the pit as a teenager, we were saying that we need a decent energy policy. Coal will always have a part to play.
We used to export energy at one point, didn't we? We were net exporters.
We used to export coal to every country in the world at one time. You go to South Wales, look at their docks there. It was king coal, literally, in this country. But hey presto, we shut our mines. We decrease the amount of gas and oil we extract, and then we're scratching our heads in 2023 thinking, my goodness, why can't we get no gas at a decent price? It's our fault.
It is our fault, and that is fired by Net Zero Zealotry. I was talking to Scott Benton MP for Blackpool South yesterday about it, and he said he feels there really is almost a religious fervour around the net zero stuff. But when you've got Nigel Farage did an article in the Telegraph the other day. He said there was 80 coal mines being opened, coal-fired power stations being opened every week in China, and that makes the electricity for them to supply us with our wind turbines that don't work properly, our solar panels, we can't store the energy, and it doesn't work. It's not going to be working today, is it? How absolutely ridiculous is that? And emissions don't know about borders, so they're just laughing at us.
So we're quite happy to have a dirty planet, just as long as it's not in this country.
Over there.
And borders, you're quite right. The dirty air, the pollution, the carbon, whatever it is, it doesn't stop on the beaches of England.
No.
It spreads across the world.
Absolutely.
And then once we do that, we've got this silly ideology that it does stop on the borders. And then when we come inside the country, we look at places like London with the ULEZ scheme. We think, the actual atmosphere stops in London. It doesn't.
No.
And I would say that this ULEZ scheme, because that does wind me up a little bit. If Khan was really serious about the environment, if the government said to him, for every pound you raise through ULEZ, you give it to central government instead of the county hall, would he have introduced that scheme? Probably not.
It's certain, and working people constantly are the losers. And the white man van, all of those white van man, all of those kind of things. The other day, I think it was David Lammy, the Labour MP, said, the guys who painters, decorators, whatever, they should get the tube. And someone did an experiment, and they wouldn't even allow. They did it for LBC, I think, and they wouldn't even allow him to take the paint on the tube who was trying to carry a ladder. I mean, some of these people are so out of touch.
Can you imagine my local window cleaner with his electric van? He'd clean 3 windows up here.
What, and he
sorry,
run out of charge?
Sorry, missus, I've got Nick Bank charge me van. What a load of bollocks that is.
It is. I don't think...
Sorry for swearing.
No, that's fine. The impact as well, especially up here, do your constituents realise that soon they're going to be told they can't buy a new gas boiler that's cheap, with cheap gas, that they're not going to be able to buy cheap petrol and diesel cars? I mean, how are people going to get round? All the cars that I saw this morning, not all of the cars, there were lots of new cars, but there was a considerable amount of older vehicles, yeah? Those people are not going to be able to buy a 40 grand car that charges up, and they might not even have a driveway.
People are seeing a sick to death are being dictated to by the do-gooders, by people like me, about this net zero journey. Now, I'm not a denier. I think we've got to leave our planet in a better condition than when we're riding.
That's environmentalism, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It is. Look at your rivers, your seas, your oceans, and stuff like that. But that said, it is unfair on the poorest in society because they're paying the price. We look at Drax Power Station, for example, in Yorkshire. Now, it's funny because that used to take coal from a local coal mine 20 miles away in Ed Miliband's constituency.
Okay.
Now, when they decided to close that mine, I think it was in 2016, he was kicking off saying, this is ridiculous. I've got my coal mine here in my patch that can supply coal to produce electricity.
So he actually had some common sense at that point.
He had some common sense. But this, well, that's in short supply. Yeah. Funnily enough, this last year in the chamber, he was fighting against the opening of a new coal mine in Cumbria, which we've lobbied for, we've campaigned for, and hopefully now we've got the green light. But go back to the Drax Power Station. It's burning wood pellets. We're importing wood pellets on tankers, burning diesel from America, chopping down forests, and then, just to add insult to injury, we're subsidising that place by £1.3 billion.
£2 million a day, isn't it?
Taxpayers' money.
Yeah, taxpayers' money. Why?
Why? It's a net zero. It's a net zero journey.
The whole net zero
Yeah,
thing.
Look, it's a world problem. It needs a world solution. And you could turn all these cameras off, shut down England, and we could all move back in caves tomorrow morning.
I think that might be happening.
And it won't make an iota of difference to the planet.
It won't make any difference to the planet. Well, people have different beliefs, but there should be a debate. I mean, Scott Benton said that he was very sceptical about the whole climate change thing, but at the very least, he felt that there should be an open and rational debate, not just about the scientific side of it, which of course there is arguments on both sides, but also about the implications. You know, I mean, 1.5 degrees of warming in 150 years. So what? You know, there's less deaths now from extreme weather events than there's ever been. And in fact, there's no more extreme weather. But there's definitely an agenda. It feels like a deliberate deindustrialisation of the UK agenda to me. Francis Egan said, I don't think anything's deliberate. He said, I don't think they're even thinking like that. But it's hard not to think like that sometimes.
Yeah, I think Francis is probably right. I think you're giving far too much credit. If you could go back in a time machine to, say, the Victorian times, if you'd come through London today and then up to Ashfield, this place would have been thick with fog. You wouldn't be able to see your hand in front of your face. We've made incredible leaps since then. Even in the last 30 or 40 years in this town where you sat now, this was a coal mining area. Every single house on this street had a coal fire. So this time of year, it would have been thick with fog here, and you'd have been, coughing and choking.
Yeah.
But that's gone.
All the technology is so much better now.
Yeah.
It really, really is. What do your family think about you being a Conservative? You know,
it's not a disease. It's not a disease.
No. I'm just thinking, just generally, in terms of, because you come from a coal mining background, all the pits were closed by Margaret Thatcher.
So I always say that growing up in the 70s, my dad was a miner, and we grew up on a strict political diet of Skinner, Scargill, and Tony Benn.
Okay.
When they came on the TV or on the wireless, as we used to call it, we listened, and it was sort of, it was not a very unbiased political upbringing. That's what you listened to. And obviously leaving school, going to work in the pits with my dad, in a union. My sisters went into the factories with my mum, so that's how it was. And you was in a closed shop industry. And when it came to voting time, you voted Labour.
Yeah.
But when I worked underground in the pits, the men I worked with were hard-working, doing a difficult job, trying to provide food for the family. But they were, like I say, hard-working. They believed in Queen and Country.
Yeah.
They believed in discipline. They were aspirational.
So that was Conservative values.
They wanted the kids to go to grammar school if there was any left. and they were Conservative values.
Yeah,
But they'd always voted Labour. So
that's interesting.
That's very interesting.
I was brought up on a diet of Margaret Thatcher being the milk snatcher. We had a big electronics firm in my family that my granddad started, and he talked about how she destroyed the electronics industry because China and all of that, and so similar.
So we hated Thatcher around here. My family hated her because it was personal. The pits were closing. That was our livelihoods. When you close a coal mine in a place like this, you're not just closing the coal mine. You're closing the miners' welfare where we drank and socialised. You're closing the local colliery cricket club, the football team,
the whole
brass
community
band,
built around
the whole community.
Yeah.
And then from overnight, you just stop seeing people.
Yeah.
Because the colliery's gone, the football team's gone, the cricket team, the rugby team, the bowls team.
It's the whole community, everything. We touched before we started the interview about the airport in Blackpool. Very busy, prosperous, healthy business airport, and it's been shut down.
Yeah.
And now, the local MP is trying to get it reopened, and he thought that maybe at the heart of it there might be some net zero zealotry around that from the Labour Council.
It's in every walk of life, and it's all hypocrisy.
It is.
You look at the COP26, the COP27. The COP26 was in Glasgow last year.
I went. I got thrown out.
Really?
Yeah, it was great. I had to do an interview from a disabled toilet with Mike Graham on Talk TV.
That's too much information.
Sorry, no, I wasn't. I was just in there.
Really?
Yeah.
You can get done for that. So, no, you see this COP26 last year, you got people, film stars, politicians, flying private jets all over the world.
I know.
We'd even got students flying up from London to support this net zero of COP26. A load of rich celebrities, superstars and politicians telling poor people they've got to pay more money out of their pockets. It's just nonsense.
It's sick. Why do you think Rishi Sunak U-turned on fracking? Because obviously Liz Truss lifted the moratorium, and it said if local people were in favour and everything. And Rishi Sunak actually, even during the hustings for the leadership contest, said that he supported fracking. It got the biggest cheers. Why do you think he U-turned?
I think it's a political distraction. I thought that's what it was. I was disappointed with the fracking, but that said, he threw us a bone, and the bone was the coal mine in Cumbria, because we had the net zero loonies banging on about its coal. And this is not thermal coal. This is not coal that's going to the power stations to be burnt to produce electricity. Although we are using foreign coal to do that.
We've fired quite a few up in the last few days, but we had to turn off our exports to France, I believe, yesterday.
And this is metallurgical coal, which is used to make steel and cement. And we're making steel, lots of it in this country.
Thank God.
And lots of cement.
That's good. That's something good. That's a good story.
Yeah, but it's coal. Coal's a dirty word for the Labour Party, but what the Labour Party failed to remind us of is that they only exist because of coal.
Yeah, isn't it funny that you've got the Labour Party who don't want working people to have cheap energy and are shutting down industries that would provide skilled working class jobs?
So you've got the Tories.
What's happened?
You've got the nasty Tories fighting to open coal mines and Labour Party fighting to keep them closed.
It's a topsy-turvy, crazy world, isn't it?
Yeah,
How would you deal with protesters like Just Stop Work, etc.? When you're Prime Minister, Lee, how would you deal with them? The people spilling the milk and shutting down the motorways?
Well, what I wouldn't do, I wouldn't be giving them flasks of tea and blankets and saying, "Oh, are you all right, love?" and then gently painting some solvent. I think I'd take a more robust approach. I think I'd just yank them off and chuck them in a police van and go and deal with them.
Absolutely. And again, if you were PM, would you be at the very least enabling exploration for companies like Quadrilla and Ineos for them to have a look and to see what's down there?
So the argument I always use with the Green Lobby is, if we could frack safely, effectively and cheaply,
which we can,
would you accept it? If we could prove we could do that, would you accept it? And the answer is always no. They just don't want it.
Well, then it doesn't make any sense.
Exactly.
It doesn't make any sense. But that leads on to quite an interesting question about the whole role of an MP. Sorry to keep harping on about talking to Scott, but it's just that's the other MP that I spoke to yesterday. Yeah. He said that even though he strongly believed in fracking and thought it was a good idea, his constituents don't. And so, in his opinion, he has to represent the views of his constituents rather than seeing it his role to to tell them that this is what I think and this is why I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
So there's an anomaly there, isn't there?
There is, and it's quite right. You have to go and try and sell it to your constituents, and have a sensible conversation with them. But if, at the end of the day, if they say they don't want it, then your job as an MP is to be their voice.
Right, so it's a fine line, because we were even talking about the fact, and it's come out in lots of mainstream media, like the Mail and stuff, and Telegraph, about that there was at the very least a proportion of Russian state funding with the anti-fracking campaign. That's been across all the national media. And, it's been well researched. It's not a conspiracy theory or anything. So on that basis, there's almost a duty to say to people, right, the information you may well have been given, it could be wrong. Yeah,
there's too many people get their information from a headline. I think. I always say in politics or any sort of campaign like this, look what people do when they go on holiday. They'll go on TripAdvisor. They'll spend 3 days looking at a hotel or a destination or a country. But when it comes to voting or something like fracking, they'll probably just spend about 2 minutes.
A lot of it's tribal, though, like you said.
It is tribal.
With voting. No, definitely. What do you think's actually going on? Do you think that the civil service are too powerful and that's why they're blocking all this independent energy stuff? Or do you think the politicians won't stand up to them? I mean, I believe to be true that a lot of civil servants have, things going on with renewable companies when they retire and they're on the boards and stuff like that, which could be a bit dodgy.
The problem you've got is civil servants don't change as often as government. So
they're entrenched, literally.
We've got civil servants that probably the darlings of Blair 25 years ago. They're still there with that mindset, that ideology. They don't like us very much, some of the senior managers. That's why you see some of this woke nonsense. And this is why you see the pushbacks in the Home Office. Places like that, you've got people like Suella Braverman in charge of 35,000 Home Office staff.
Yeah.
And now people say, well, you're in charge of sorting that. That's one person against a whole culture of 30,000 people.
And especially if they don't agree with what she's saying.
Exactly.
They're just not going to do it,
They're awkward. They slow down. They're awkward. They push back. Legal challenges, stuff like that. So it is, the civil service for me is one of the biggest problems in this country. So
do you think that it could be argued that the civil service are blocking us being energy independent?
Yeah, quite likely. Yeah.
Really?
It's the civil service, it's the lobbyists, it's sometimes our own party which are too scared to take a side. And I'm sorry, in politics, you have to take a side.
That's what it's all about.
Have to take a side.
So isn't it interesting then that you're saying that the people that have not been elected, the lobbyists in the civil service, are dictating, whether people can eat or eat, basically?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's even at local level in councils, that's the case. You've got councillors and officers.
Yeah, of course,
and quite frankly, it's slightly different at councils because you've got some councillors, let's be honest, they're not the sharpest knives in the drawer. And, well, they're not. They just spend all the time in Witherspoons just talking nonsense. Or in the local boozer.
Well, they're not going in there at 8 o'clock in the morning having a pint with their breakfast.
Well, some of them are.
Do you know what? I always secretly quite impressed by that when I go in there and see men having a pint with their breakfast. I don't know why.
So I got in trouble at conference for, this was outrageous, I don't think it was, just banging on about the economy. And I said the best barometer for the economy in places like this is Witherspoons. Once they start closing in Ashfield, I know I've got a problem locally.
I wish I'd known there was a Wetherspoons in Ashfield when we came this morning.
There's two.
There's two. Oh, right.
There's three, actually.
Who do you think is going to win the next election?
It's a good question. I think if we get our act together, because the thing is, when I knock doors in Ashfield, yes, people are grumpy with us. Bearing in mind we've just spent 500 billion of taxpayers' money on COVID, on energy support, etc. We spent all that. That's not increased our vote share at all.
Where's all the money coming from?
We're borrowing money.
Right.
But if what they're saying to me is, yes, we're grumpy with the Tory party. We think you're doing a good job, obviously, but there's no love for Labour.
No,
There's no love for Keir Starmer.
Well, he doesn't represent working people at all.
It's boring.
And he's boring.
He's boring. He's the Ken Barlow of politics. There you go.
Was it Churchill who said about Clement Attlee that an empty taxi arrived and was it Attlee?
I don't know.
Yeah, and Clement Attlee got out. I'm sure that will be corrected if I've got that wrong.
Yeah.
You speak obviously to your colleagues in Parliament all the time. Secretly, off the record, to you, do they believe in net zero? Because I'm hearing at dinners and things that people privately, when they don't think they're being filmed or whatever, or They're saying it's a load of bollocks.
Have you
oh, you said it, so I've just said it. Sorry.
Where's that swear box? The Tory Party is a broad church, and it's much broader than the Labour Party. So you have got a difference of opinion right across the Conservative Party.
Okay.
Whereas the Labour Party, it's pretty narrow, their thoughts or what they're allowed to think. So, yeah, there are some. I've argued with colleagues even in the chamber about the coal mine, about the net zero, and I think I said to one minister, not in the chamber, but was talking about the green levy on fuel bills. I said, what do you think would happen if you put a tick box on the gas and electric bill and people wanted to opt in or opt out? How many people do you think could sign it?
Yeah, exactly.
Not many.
No, there's not many. And I think a lot of people think that the public are very pro net zero, but we did some polling a couple of months ago, Car 26, and 62%, this is a YouGov poll, of those who had an opinion either way, wanted a referendum on it.
Well, look.
So it's not the vote winner that everyone keeps saying it is.
It's not a vote winner. I've knocked on thousands of doors.
Reform are not pro net zeros. That's good.
I've knocked on thousands of doors for Labour and Conservative over years and years, and it's never come up on the door once. I tell a lie. I once knocked on some Lib Demi Greenie, hemp vest wearing.
Did he
vegan.
have a wig? Did he have solar panels and little?
You know the type, man.
Right.
Skinny jeans, beard, hemp slippers, and
was he holding the baby?
I am a vegan. Everybody else should be. That's it. But it never comes up, Lois.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't come up. So so I need to ask you about your recent comments with regards to budgeting and food banks and stuff like that. I'm sorry about this, but I've spent the last few days talking to people who use food banks and stuff like that. And, I do believe that you are right to a certain extent, but I'm just interested to know what percentage you think of people are genuinely in need of the food banks and what percentage do have budgeting issues? And also, do you think you were being a little bit harsh?
No.
Okay.
I always double down. I've worked in food banks.
Okay,
And my background is working for Citizens Advice Bureau.
Okay.
So I worked for them for 10 years.
Right.
So we would have people come in. This is when the Labour government was in, by the way, when you weren't allowed to refer people to food banks. The food banks existed, but the DWP weren't allowed, so we had to do it as a CAB.
Oh, okay.
But the first thing we used to do is apart from refer them for a food parcel, is go through the finances. We used to have an income and expenditure sheet. And in the vast majority of cases, people just couldn't manage the money. And then later working on with the food bank, we found out a lot of people were coming in, they hadn't got the basic cooking skills. We were giving them vegetables and they were throwing them away. So
because they didn't know what to do
No,
with
they didn't.
them.
So what we did, we set up some cooking classes and some budgeting courses and, trying to help people. So my comments, although I tried to get the press, the media, you lot involved in my original project, weren't interested. So when I stood up in Parliament and mentioned it went viral and got people talking about it. And I've had a lot of haters come in and a lot of people saying, you know what, you're right. People do need help.
Well, home economics was taken out of the curriculum for a long time. It's actually gone back in. My daughter's learning how to cook at school. Obviously,
but I want that to be a national policy, and that's what I'm campaigning for now, to put
that's brilliant.
Put life skills back on the curriculum. That's not just cooking, that's budgeting. Even things like changing a plug. Kids can't do that these days.
And ironing.
Ironing.
My nanny was taught how to iron and stuff like that. I must admit, I'm not that particularly good.
So no, I wasn't having to go at poor people. I weren't.
No, I know.
I just think that people need help.
I spoke to a taxi driver who works full time. Well, he works 6 days a week in Blackpool, and he said that not only does he volunteer at this community kitchen place that does free meals and stuff, but he also at one point had to use it because he had a house, not a little tiny flat, he had a house and his gas bill went from £20 to £60 a week. And he literally had to make the heat or eat choice.
No, I get that, and I know people having tough choices to make.
But he didn't look to me like he didn't know how to budget, that guy.
No, he's not going to use a food bank every week, is he?
No, he just went a couple of times.
Yeah, and that's what a food bank should be for. It should be there as a hand up, when you go through a difficult time.
Not a handout.
We're all going to need help at some stage in our life. And my point I was trying to make is, some people are just dependent. They treat it like the Morrisons or Asda. They go every week and they get the shopping.
And then buy some cigs.
Yeah, whereas the taxi driver, that's a perfect example of why a food bank should exist.
Right, okay. I must admit, whenever a man says to me, especially if I'm involved with someone, you know, oh, I'm not going to give you the money that you need, Lois. I'm going to teach you how to get it. It really annoys me. The fish argument. I say, right, number one, I'm not a man, right? So you can't teach me how to fish. But anyway, so I get that. I need to ask you as well. You set a deadline for our dearly beloved Prime Minister of the end of March to do with, I think it was to do with immigration specifically, is that right?
Yeah.
What was that about? And, and how's he doing? And how long has he got?
Well,
2 months.
2 months, yeah. Well, the deadline was, it was misinterpreted by lots of people in your profession. Look, we've got less than 2 years for the general election. We know that, and I think if we've not sorted it, or appear to have sorted it by the first quarter of this year, then we're in big trouble.
Yeah.
So it was like putting us all on notice, not just the PM.
So you weren't putting him on notice personally?
No, not in person. Us as a party, as a government.
So you misquoted then?
No, it's what I said.
Right.
But
because it sounded like something was going to happen.
No, it's not. People saying, "Are you going to defect? Are you going to?" No, I'm not going to defect. I'm not going anywhere.
Okay, that's good. I'm pleased about that.
I want to win my seat again as a Conservative.
Okay.
And I want the Conservative Party to be more like me.
And what to actually be Conservative?
I want them to.
No, wow, that's.
I want them to stop pandering to footballers.
Yeah.
You know, when footballers come on TV and say something, stop pandering to them. Just, you know.
Yeah.
We hated Maggie around here, but what we did respect about her, she made a decision and she stuck to it. And and I always say, even though we didn't like her, she was the right Prime Minister for the time.
Okay.
A bit like Churchill.
Yeah.
A bit like Maggie would say. You could even say Blair was the right person for the time, even though I pretty much disagree with. But the country needed change. They needed reining back in a little bit, in a different direction.
I totally bought into all that. I was 15 in the 97 election. I was going out campaigning, knocking on the doors. I thought
What, for Blair?
Yeah, I thought Blair was the most fantastic thing that had ever happened.
See, he ticked a lot of boxes, Blair did. He was a handsome man. He had policies. He had a great team behind him. He had some heavyweight politicians, you know, ready to step into the cabinet role. He had a policy of national minimum wage, which people thought, that's going to drag me out of poverty. The tax credits, which drag people out of poverty, but that's a different conversation.
Yeah, but that's got people on the teat, unfortunately.
But yeah, no, he's great. But Starmer's got no ideas, and you ask him, he hasn't nothing to say. No,
that's absolutely true. The reason why I liked him was I thought, you can be pro-business and be a caring, lovely person. But I was, as I say, 50. Him. Do you know what? I did meet him once, and I was intending, because I went to a dinner to have a go at him about the Iraq War, but he was so charming, and I didn't. I feel bad about that, but no, I just sort of sat there.
So your principles went
starry-eyed. Unfortunately, that's terrible, isn't it? I can't stand him now, but that's different. Right. Okay. So 5 quick fire questions, and then I'm all done. Okay. Number 1. Climate catastrophe or no climate catastrophe?
No climate catastrophe.
Okay, fracking or no fracking?
Fracking.
Fracking or wind farms?
Fracking.
Excellent. Juicy steak or a salad? Oh no, it's different at the moment, isn't it?
It's steak, but no chips at the moment.
Steak. So steak with salad?
Steak with salad, yeah. Yeah. Compromise.
Excellent. And final question to you, Lee Anderson, MP. Heat or eat?
Heat or eat? It's got to be heat. You can live longer without food than you can without heat.
Brilliant.
That's just simple biology.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for agreeing to see me.
Cheers, darling.
Okay.